You ever considered that a private habit, something rarely discussed, might be subtly working against your well-being? Because the truth is, and it might surprise you, if you're past 60 and still regularly engage in self-pleasure, you could be unintentionally affecting your erections. Not because of the act itself, but because of the way you're doing it and how often. I'm Dr. Harold Grant. For over 30 years, I've dedicated my career to helping men across the country revitalize their health, improve their blood flow, restore their testosterone levels, and rediscover intimacy. And one of the most frequent, hushed questions I hear is this: Doctor, am I harming myself when I do it? It's a significant question because, while self-pleasure can indeed be a healthy, even therapeutic practice for older men, there are at least 10 hidden dangers that are seldom discussed. Issues like potential nerve damage in the pelvic area, hormonal imbalances, even emotional isolation that can gradually diminish your self-assurance without you noticing. But the good news is, each of these dangers can be avoided. So, in this video, I'm going to carefully guide you through these 10 risks, one by one, and demonstrate how to transform this private act into a beneficial activity that promotes healthy blood flow, testosterone levels, and overall sexual health. And towards the end, I'll share a simple, natural technique, requiring just 7 seconds a day, that has assisted countless men in regaining lasting performance. No pills, no embarrassment, just straightforward, practical advice. Before we continue, please take a moment to click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. This ensures you'll never miss another honest, science-backed health video created specifically for men over 60. And if this topic resonates with you, please type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback is invaluable in helping me tailor these discussions to be as helpful as possible for you. Alright, let's begin with the first risk, which often develops gradually and unnoticed. It's not physical, but emotional. When self-pleasure begins to replace genuine connection, it can lead to a far more serious issue than many men anticipate: isolation. Risk number 1, social isolation. I've spoken with numerous men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, and many eventually confess to a feeling they never expected to experience: loneliness. Not the dramatic, cinematic loneliness of empty rooms and somber music, but a subtle, creeping distance from authentic connection. It often begins innocently enough, with a little time alone, a moment of stress relief. But gradually, solitary pleasure becomes more frequent, and human interaction becomes less so. Initially, you might rationalize it as being easier. No pressure, no expectations, no possibility of rejection. But over time, you stop reaching out. You avoid intimacy, even emotional intimacy, because you're finding just enough comfort in private. What you may not realize is that this comfort is slowly supplanting companionship. And that's when the harm begins. I've witnessed men lose the motivation to date, the desire even to converse, and the most disheartening aspect is that they attribute it to simply growing older, when in reality, it's a form of emotional withdrawal. A life that gradually diminishes without conscious awareness. Self-pleasure should be a component of your life, not a substitute for it. Because while isolation erodes your confidence, the next risk could be quietly damaging your body on a surface level, without you even feeling it. Let's discuss that now. Risk number 2, skin micro-lesions. Most men don't give much thought to how they touch themselves. It's familiar. It's automatic. And for decades, it's likely been perfectly fine. But there's something I wish more of my patients understood. As we age, the skin on the penis becomes thinner, more fragile, and slower to heal. What felt completely normal at 30 can actually cause genuine damage at 65. I once had a patient in his early 70s, a healthy, active man who took pride in staying in shape, but he came to me complaining of recurring irritation and a burning sensation after climax. It turned out he had been using the same dry, aggressive technique since his 20s. He was unaware that tiny microtears were forming each time, invisible to the naked eye, but sufficient to trigger inflammation, sensitivity, and even discomfort during urination. These micro-lesions may seem insignificant, but they can create openings for bacteria, lead to scarring, and result in long-term loss of sensitivity. And many men never make the connection. They simply notice that pleasure doesn't feel quite the same anymore and attribute it to age. But it's not always age. Sometimes it's about how you're treating the most sensitive part of your body. Be gentle with yourself. Use lubrication. Your body deserves care, not wear and tear. Because, while physical damage can heal, the next risk affects something deeper. Something that could alter how your brain responds to arousal altogether. Let's explore that next. Risk number 3, desensitization. This one is more relevant than many men realize because it develops gradually, and you often don't notice it until it's already affecting your intimacy. I recall a patient in his late 60s, a sharp man, married for over 40 years. He came in frustrated, saying he couldn't feel much during sex anymore. His wife was understanding, but he felt embarrassed, even ashamed. After a few questions, it became clear that he had conditioned himself to respond only to a very specific type of solitary stimulation. Same grip, same pressure, same rhythm every single time. Your brain is remarkably adaptable. If you consistently train it to associate pleasure with one exact pattern, it eventually becomes dependent on that pattern. It's called sensory adaptation, and it's more common than you might think. The problem is, real intimacy rarely follows that same script. So, when you're with a partner, someone who touches you differently, at a different pace, your body doesn't respond the way it used to. Not because you're broken, but because you've trained yourself out of responsiveness. The good news is that the brain can relearn. You simply need to reintroduce variety, curiosity, and imagination back into the experience. Because while desensitization is reversible, the next risk isn't just about sensation. It's about the warning signs your body may be sending you. And what happens when you ignore them? Let's discuss that. Risk number 4, masking erectile dysfunction. One of the most challenging things for many men to admit, even to themselves, is that something isn't functioning as it once did. I remember a gentleman in his early 60s who came to see me, not for a sexual issue, but for fatigue. As we spoke, he casually mentioned that he could achieve an erection during self-pleasure, but struggled every time he was with his wife. He assumed it was stress or nerves or simply aging. But what he didn't realize was that this discrepancy, strong alone, weak with a partner, can be a subtle early indicator of a deeper issue. You see, erections are more than just a bedroom matter. They're often the first warning sign of underlying problems like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, low testosterone, or even early nerve damage. When you're alone, the brain and body can relax differently. But if blood flow, hormones, or sensitivity are compromised, those issues often manifest most clearly during genuine intimacy. The problem is, many men use self-pleasure as a discreet workaround. It allows them to avoid the difficult conversation, the checkup, the uncomfortable truth. And while it might be effective in the short term, over time it can delay the very care that could safeguard their health and their relationship. Because while this risk conceals the truth, the next one is far more physical, and it begins with something as simple as how you sit. Let's examine it more closely. Risk number 5, nerve compression from poor posture. It's something most men rarely consider, posture, especially when you're in a private moment. The last thing on your mind is how you're sitting or whether your body is properly supported. But after working with men for over 3 decades, I've seen how common this hidden risk truly is. One man I spoke with, 68 years old, retired, healthy, came to me complaining of tingling in his groin and occasional numbness. Initially, he feared it was something serious, even neurological. But after a few questions, the cause became clear. He had been spending extended periods sitting on a hard chair, hunched over, unknowingly putting pressure on his pudendal nerve, the main nerve that provides sensation to the pelvic region. Over time, this type of compression can reduce blood flow, cause numbness, or even lead to chronic pain. The solution isn't complex: a soft surface, a reclined or lying down position, proper lumbar support, but you have to be mindful. The body may be resilient, but it's not invincible. These small habits accumulate, and when they involve circulation or nerve pressure in one of the most sensitive areas of your body, the stakes are high. Because while posture can affect nerves, the next risk impacts your emotional health in ways most men don't foresee until they're already experiencing it. Let's discuss that next. Risk number 6, using it as your only emotional outlet. Every man needs an outlet, a way to release tension, frustration, or stress. And for many men, especially those living alone or facing daily pressures in silence, self-pleasure becomes that outlet. I understand. It's private. It's reliable. It helps you feel something when the rest of life feels dull. But here's the truth I've learned after talking with so many men over the years: when self-pleasure becomes your only emotional release, it can start working against you. I remember a patient, 72, who admitted that after his wife passed away, he started relying on self-pleasure to help him fall asleep, then to ease his anxiety, then to fill the quiet moments in the afternoon. He didn't even enjoy it much anymore. It just became a way to avoid the ache of being alone. Over time, he noticed he wasn't reaching out to friends as often. He didn't go on walks like he used to. His world got smaller, and he couldn't figure out why. The danger here isn't the act itself. It's using it as a substitute for emotional expression. Your body may find temporary relief, but your mind and heart still carry the weight. And that weight can manifest in unexpected ways, like guilt or shame that's been quietly following you since boyhood. That's exactly what we'll explore next. Risk number 7, guilt or shame. This is one of the most private, unspoken struggles I see in my practice. And yet, it's also one of the most common. Guilt, shame, that quiet voice in the back of your mind that asks, should I really be doing this at my age? I've had men sit across from me, strong men, men who've raised families and built lives, and they still lower their voices when they bring it up. Often, the roots go all the way back to childhood, religious teachings, family beliefs, cultural messages that taught them this natural act was something dirty or weak or sinful. And even now, decades later, those old messages linger in the background. The truth is, shame is burdensome. It doesn't just reside in your thoughts, it permeates your body. It manifests as anxiety, low self-worth, or even physical tension. Some men start avoiding intimacy altogether, not because they've lost desire, but because they're ashamed of having it. If that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly: there is nothing wrong with you. Self-pleasure, when practiced mindfully, is a natural, healthy part of being human at any age. And if guilt is interfering with your well-being, it may be time to speak with someone who can help you untangle those beliefs. Because while guilt can subtly shape your mindset, the next risk might be affecting you physically, and it's one most men don't even know exists. Let's look at that now. Risk number 8, pelvic congestion. Most men are surprised when I bring this up because it's not something you'll hear about in everyday conversation, but it's real. Pelvic congestion is a feeling of heaviness, aching, or dull discomfort in the lower region. And it can stem from one simple thing: doing too much too often without giving your body a break. One man I worked with in his late 60s had recently retired and found himself with more time, more privacy, and more stress than he anticipated. What started as once a day soon became 2 or 3 times, not out of desire, but out of habit. At first, it provided relief. Then he noticed a nagging soreness in his testicles, a feeling of pressure that didn't dissipate. He feared something serious. But after ruling out infection or more urgent concerns, it became clear that his body was requesting rest. The truth is that even healthy activities can become unhealthy in excess. Just like exercise, sexual activity, even solitary activity requires recovery time. Without it, blood flow accumulates in the pelvic area, and the tissues don't receive the circulation or balance they require. So, how often is too often? That varies, but your body knows. Discomfort is a signal, not an inconvenience. Now, while this risk is primarily physical, the next one affects something even more personal. And for some men, it can become an obstacle to fatherhood. Let's discuss that next. Risk number 9, reduced semen quality. Now, I recognize that for many men over 60, having children may no longer be a priority, but for some, it still is. Whether it's a second marriage, IVF planning, or simply wanting to keep that option open, fertility can still be important later in life. And here's something many men don't realize: frequent ejaculation, especially on a daily basis, can temporarily reduce the concentration and quality of your sperm. I had a patient, 63 years old, newly remarried, and he and his wife were hoping to conceive. He was healthy, active, and sexually confident, but after months of trying, nothing was happening. We ran some basic tests, and while everything appeared generally normal, his sperm count was unusually low. When we talked further, he admitted he was ejaculating almost every day simply out of habit. He was unaware that even something so natural could affect his chances of starting a family. The good news is that the solution is simple. Studies show that a brief period of abstinence, around 2 to 5 days, can restore optimal sperm quality. It's not about stopping completely, just about allowing your body time to replenish. Because while this risk may only apply to some, the final one on our list affects almost every man I speak with. It has nothing to do with your body and everything to do with what you feed your mind. Let's take a closer look. Risk number 10, disconnection from reality. This last one is difficult to discuss, not because it's uncommon, but because it's so prevalent. For many men, especially in private moments, pornography becomes the primary source of stimulation. It's accessible, affordable, predictable, and always available. But over time, something subtle begins to shift. What once felt exciting begins to feel empty. Genuine connection with a partner becomes more difficult to engage in, not just physically, but emotionally. One man I worked with in his early 70s told me he had stopped feeling much during intimacy with his wife. He still loved her, still desired closeness, but something felt off. After some honest conversation, we realized he'd been relying heavily on explicit, high-stimulation content, the kind that floods your brain with dopamine and trains your expectations towards fantasy. As a result, his brain struggled to respond to the natural, imperfect, human beauty of real touch. The mind is powerful. What you regularly feed it becomes its new baseline. And when your brain becomes conditioned to over-the-top stimulation, real-life connection can feel dull, even when your heart desires more. The solution isn't shame, it's balance. Rebuild intimacy with imagination, memory, emotion. Allow your arousal to originate from within, not solely from a screen. Because now that we've explored all 10 risks, the real question is, how do you use this knowledge to empower yourself? That's precisely what we'll uncover in the final moments. Stay with me. Conclusion. So, there you have it, 10 silent risks that most men never hear about, even though they impact millions after the age of 60. And I'm not sharing any of this to instill fear. I'm sharing it because I've seen too many good men suffer in silence, unaware that small habits were gradually taking something away from them: connection, sensation, confidence, even health. The truth is, self-pleasure isn't the enemy. Practiced mindfully, it can support circulation, hormone balance, and emotional well-being. But done without awareness, it can quietly isolate, desensitize, or distract you from what your body truly needs. If even one of these risks resonated with you, I hope you'll see it as a signal, not of something being wrong, but of something worth improving. Because you're not too old, you're not broken, and you deserve to feel alive, connected, and strong again. This is where change begins. And I'm honored to be here with you.